Hey there, writer rebels. Have you ever been overwhelmed by all the advice out there telling you what your book should or shouldn't be? Well, join me today as we talk about a condition called perfection paralysis and the overload of all of that well-meaning advice. Hey everyone, it's me, Scarlett Kol, and welcome back to my channel. If you've been here before, thank you so much for coming back. And if you are brand new, I hope you like what you see. If you'd like to stick around for more videos like this, make sure you're hitting the subscription bar and the notification bell, and they'll let you know whenever I put up a video, which is typically on Thursdays. Today, this video is going to be a little bit different than they've typically been before, just because I want to talk about something a little bit more in detail that's kind of been affecting me lately, and I know it affects a lot of people out there, especially early writers. So today we are going to be talking about something called perfection paralysis. And basically what this is the concept of when people are striving towards perfection that they aren't unable to move or to move forward. But before we get too far into this video, I want to lay down a little truth bomb for everyone out there. And what I want to tell you is that your book, my book, and every book out there is not perfect. You may think so, but there is no such thing as a perfect book. Maybe sometime in the future, I'm going to renege on this and there's going to be a book that's put out that solves world peace and hunger and the coronavirus and everything that there is out there. But up until the date of filming, there is no such thing as a perfect book. There are going to be possibly errors in them. There's going to be a better way to structure certain sentences. There's going to be different ways that someone else would have structured a plot. There's going to be a better word that could have been into dialogue. But that doesn't mean that any of those books out there aren't worth reading. I know this may come as a shock to some people, but the fact is that it's true. There is no perfect book. Well, what happens when you become obsessed with creating a book that is perfect, especially when it is virtually an unattainable goal? Well, this is what we're going to talk about today, and hopefully I'm going to be giving you a few little things on what you can do to overcome this as well. This is something that I struggle with, and it's essentially why I created this video in the first place. Like I've said, recently I've been doing a lot of editing through July and August. Christmas anthology I've been working on, Keeper of Shadows, Sleepless. So I've basically just had this editing hat on for like a good couple of months right now. And I've been analyzing words and going through everything that I've been working on. One of these projects in particular has given me a lot of grief and has been going very, very slowly. The reason that it's kind of been slow is I've kind of been obsessed with breaking everything down and trying to make the best that it can be. That's not a bad thing. Obviously, as an author and as a writer, you want to be putting out the best work that you can do. However, when it gets to the point that you're just spinning your wheels or slowing yourself down because you are obsessed with trying to make the story perfect, then it's really not serving you at all. In my case, I had already had a few setbacks with this book and I'd been struggling to get it done as it is. I honestly think it might be cursed, and I will be talking about that a little bit later when the book finally releases, but I have been at a pretty slow slog trying to get through this editing. And I basically had to sit back and give myself this same pep talk that I'm basically going to give for everyone else. Because perfection paralysis can happen to anyone. It can strike at any time. You could be a newer writer, which I do see a lot of newer or inexperienced writers, ones that haven't published or submitted or anything yet, who really get caught up in this cycle, and we'll explain that a little bit more as we go. But it can happen to even the most seasoned author. It might be the book of their heart and they are just obsessed with making it perfect. Maybe they've had some bad reviews lately. Maybe they're just in the wrong mindset. There can be a lot of reasons why they end up in this state of perfection paralysis. So what exactly is wrong with perfection? There's nothing wrong with perfection, but the strive for perfection and being obsessed with it will basically slow you down, like in my case where my edits are taking a long time, or in a lot of cases, it can keep you from reaching your goals. Or it can also keep you even from trying to reach your goals. So how does this even happen? Well, a lot of it comes from the fact that there's a lot of advice out there. I know I'm probably not the one to talk, considering I come on here every week and give advice, but sometimes the amount of advice that's out there, no matter how well-meaning, depending on when you receive that advice, how you feel about that advice, and how it applies to your work can definitely impact how you feel about your work. You may find a piece of advice, watch a video, read a book, something like that, and all of a sudden you're going to feel very down on yourself, and then it's going to kind of overshadow the entire project that you're working on. You don't feel that you're good enough. You don't feel like you can write to a certain level that you're hoping to. You feel inferior, and therefore you keep working at it and try to make things perfect. The other things that can happen is that you just quit. You find that it's completely overwhelming. There's too many things that you need to do. You feel like you can never achieve the level that you want to get to, so therefore you just straight up quit. Obviously, you're never going to publish a book if you quit. So if publishing a book and having your story in readers' hands is a dream of yours, then obviously that's going to be a major problem. Or the one that is also very common is self-sabotage. Self-sabotage can come from just procrastinating on the work that you want to do. You're frustrated and you're not really sure how to deal with something in your story. So all of a sudden you spend more time on social media. You take your time going through edits and re-going over that same sentence over and over and over again, even though you know better and that you know that you should be moving forward. Or you get into just some of these other behaviors where you take yourself away from your writing and in some cases over-edit your work and make things a whole lot worse. And that's kind of what I was doing. I was completely psyching myself out. I was really, really worried about this book being as good as it could possibly be. It's been a while since I had a very new concept. I've been writing a lot in fairy tales, all that sort of thing. So coming back to paranormal, it was a little bit different than what I'd been working on for the last couple of years. Even though I do have a paranormal out, that was one of the first books that I had written. So it was kind of going back to that audience for me, and there was a lot at stake. I really, really want this book to do well. So I obsessed about every single word in this manuscript, and it was totally bogging me down and psyching me out. Also doing all these videos of advice on how I should be writing. So every single time I used any sort of passive language or telling, I was completely analyzing everything to make sure that that was the appropriate choice. I'm not going to get that right 100% of the time. And unfortunately, I was psyching myself out because I was giving that advice and I wanted to make sure that I was following it to the letter. But the fact of the matter is, not everybody can. The thing that's completely snapped me out of it, however, is I decided to take a break one night from editing because I was very frustrated. I took a nice hot bath and I picked up a book that I'd been slowly reading over the summer. It's a little hard for me sometimes to read while I'm editing because it's just a lot of words, but I decided to try and finish this book. It is a traditionally published book by St. Martin's by a New York Times bestselling author. And I sat down and I was reading this particular story and I got to about a half-page section that broke a lot of the rules out there. A lot of the stuff that I've talked about on this channel, a lot of stuff that I haven't talked about that I've just learned over the years that, you know, it isn't necessarily bad, but I know that at least two of the editors I've worked with over the years would totally have made me rewrite that based on the language that was used and various different things within the section. I'm not going to say who the author was because it does happen a lot in traditional books and indie books everywhere because, like I said from the beginning, no book is perfect. And I sat there and I kind of picked it out because I had been editing and I had really been analyzing language and going through sentences like that. This is why I don't usually like to read when I've been editing because I kind of like over edit everything. And I realized that it didn't change the story for me. Most people wouldn't have even noticed this half page. They would have whipped right through it just to move on with the plot and continued on with the story. It didn't stop me either. I still enjoyed the story. Once I'm finished this book, I'm planning on reading the second and the third ones in the trilogy. So obviously, it didn't make that much of a difference. What I'm saying here is there will always be something that can be fixed in your story. You can go back to the first story you've ever written, and I'm sure you could completely edit it again. I'm sure if you were Stephen King, J.K. Rowling, Stephanie Meyer, whoever you adore out there, you could go back and edit at least something in any book that they had, but it doesn't make a difference to the reader as long as it's not a fatal flaw throughout the story. What I'm not saying is that just says that it's okay to do mediocre work, slap it up on Amazon, and think that that's going to be okay. I will always encourage people to do the best work that they possibly can. And if it goes outside the limits of their abilities, to hire on an editor or get beta readers or something like that to enhance their writing whenever they can. I think that anybody who puts a book out should really be trying to put the best work that they possibly can out there in the world, as readers are depending on those authors to put out their best work. But the key is, your best right now doesn't necessarily mean the best ever in the entirety of the world. Think of it this way. When I was growing up, and kind of when I get to be by myself on the weekends, I really enjoy playing Legend of Zelda. So if you know anything about a Legend of Zelda, it's a role-playing game. It's kind of basic, very cartoony, but it is the perfect metaphor for the publishing and learning process for writers. So basically, when you start out, you're in your tiny little village, you're this Link character boy in this tiny little village. You have no weapons, you have no idea what's going on, and there's only the people in your little hut that you know. So what happens? You move out into the world, you learn things, you talk to people, you get better. Just like you are with writing, you learn things, you get advice, you watch YouTube videos, you gain allies just like you would in the game. You get critique partners that are going to help enhance your writing. You are going to get weapons. So obviously these are going to be a little bit different in writing. However, all of a sudden I kind of want a writer's sword. I think that would be very cool. But you gain weapons and things in your repertoire that are going to make things better. These can be pieces of advice, they can be pieces of software, they can be craft books, they could be anything that's going to improve your level. So eventually, this little Link person is going to move out of his village and venture into the vast, bigger world. When he's first living in his little hut and he has no weapons, he can't fight the big boss. He doesn't even know the big boss exists yet. He's kind of in this like little beginner writer stage. You're learning, you're figuring things out, but you're definitely not ready yet. You're definitely not ready to take on the world because you haven't learned enough. You have no weapons, you have no allies. You are not ready to leave the safety of your village. Eventually, you will gain enough knowledge and you will gain enough experience that you will start to level up. Once you level up enough, you get to leave your village, or you get to send out your queries or publish your book, or get to that point where you can share your work with other people. However, just because you've reached this point doesn't mean all of a sudden you can still go take on that big boss. That's not how these games work, and that's not how writing works. You can't go from level 1 to level 200 in one step. You have to take each level as it comes. Sometimes you will move through some levels very, very quickly, and sometimes you're going to get stuck at a level for a long period of time, or you're going to plateau with your skills and abilities and resources, and you're going to stay at a kind of certain level in your writing. And then eventually things are going to improve again, and you're going to get better and better and better the more you practice. However, if you never publish or fight any of the mini bosses or venture out into the world, you can't level up. Writing is one of those skills that you learn by doing, and going with the video game example, if you don't fight the big boss, you're not going to get the particular weapon that you need to improve your level. So if you get stuck and you decide not to send out that query because it's not perfect, or you're not going to publish that book because it's not 100% perfect, then you're never going to get the experience of sending out that query or publishing that book, because you're going to be stuck in your little village thinking that you can take on the world when you aren't ready for it yet. You need to level up in stages. It takes time. And what your best is right now is probably not going to be your best in 2 years. It's going to be better. And then 2 years from there, you're going to be even better and better and better and better. But you need to move through those channels and level up. It takes time. And you need to accept the fact that the level 10 that you're at right now isn't the same as level 15, but it doesn't make the game any less fun or you any less competent. It just means that there's definitely room to improve and room to grow, and there always will be. So sitting back and refusing to put out your work or spinning your wheels and working on the same manuscript over and over and over again until it's absolutely perfect is probably going to backfire on you, because you're not really going to improve. You're just staying in that same place over and over and over again. And the other risk that you have is that you can over edit your manuscript and turn it into something that you no longer want, or it's no longer going to be your voice. The other thing is you can take every single piece of advice out there. You can't apply all of that to your manuscript. It's not possible. First off, because not everything will apply. And secondly, because you can't be perfect at all things. So sometimes you're just going to have to let things go so you can move forward. And then maybe on the next book, once you've got something mastered, you can move on to this higher level piece of advice. Try to work that in, see how that works. You release that book, you found something else that you want to work on. You get better at that. That's how you improve. That's how you grow as a writer. But thinking that you're going to go from baby writer to New York Times bestselling amazing writer isn't going to happen overnight. It never does. And convincing yourself that it is possible is only going to drag yourself down. So what can you do when you get up into a situation like this? Well, one, you can come back and watch this video where I'm going to tell you and give you a big virtual hug that it's gonna be okay. Your book does not have to be perfect. It just needs to be the best that you can do for right now. If you've built up some skills, maybe had some readers, and you know that you're good enough to at least leave your village, like little green Link, moving out into the world, then go for it. Send that query out, see what happens. Maybe look at self-publishing, hire that editor and see what they think of your work without stopping yourself from actually even trying those things. You can do this. I know you can do this. So many people have done it before you, and so many people will do it after you. So you sitting there for 18 years on one book isn't going to do you any good, because you're never going to reach for those stars that you really, really want to catch. Number 2, realize that this happens and can happen to anyone at any point in their career where they don't think that the book that they're working on or the project that they're working on or them as a writer is good enough. Constantly happens. You will hear stuff. Imposter syndrome is very, very similar to this. And the other thing that perfectionism likes to hide itself in is self-doubt. One of the reasons a lot of people try to make their stuff perfect is because they don't think that they're good enough. Honestly, this is a process. It's a growth. It's something that you need to develop over time. You will not wake up being Stephen King or Dean Koontz or whoever you want to be. You need to develop into the writer that you're going to be, and you can't do that without writing. Number 3, step back and reflect on the writing that you have. Is this the best that you feel that you can do? Have you applied everything that you want to? Are there certain areas where you think that you need particular assistance? Are there people that you can ask to help you out? Focus on maybe one area. If you know, for instance, that you use a lot of passive voice, focus on trying to get rid of some of that stuff. If you know that you struggle with dialogue, maybe really focus in this book of trying to get better at dialogue. But don't think that you need to be the best at absolutely everything in every single manuscript. It's not going to happen. If you're focusing on dialogue, yes, the rest of it still needs to be readable and it needs to work and the story needs to work, but you don't need to focus on every little thing being perfect, because you will never finish, because it is almost an impossible task. And the 4th one, which is taking the most practical route here, because I am a CPA during the day, is something called a cost-benefit analysis. Cost-benefit analysis is a accounting and finance concept. Most people have heard of it, but if you haven't, I'll give you a quick update. Essentially, a cost-benefit analysis is, for this amount of benefit, how much is it going to cost me? So this is one thing that I had to do with myself. And I sat there and I was looking at the changes that I was making within my manuscript to try and make it the best that it can be. And I found that I was essentially just tinkering with the same words over and over and over again. It wasn't that I was actually making anything better. I was just making it different. So for the amount of time or the cost that I was spending on this manuscript, the benefit was definitely not there. I wasn't making big plot changes that were going to improve my story. I wasn't making significant character changes that were going to improve my story. I wasn't rewriting large sections. I was essentially just puttering with little word choices over and over and over again. And this essentially not only took up a lot of time, but was definitely holding me back. I was creating my own distractions because I felt that it needed to be better, and I was trying to apply all of these things that I didn't. I had perfection paralysis. I was not moving forward, and I was sabotaging myself by spinning my wheels and not moving forward. And the fifth thing you can do, which really should have been the first thing, but we're past that now, is just recognize this is where you are. Perfection paralysis, like I said, can affect anyone. So is it affecting you? Step back and take a look at what you're doing and where you are in your process and figure out if this is something that you're actually dealing with. Recognizing that you are in this state of perfection paralysis is probably the first step that you need to take, because then you're going to realize what you're doing and try to take active steps to get out of it, or you are going to go the opposite way and decide that this isn't necessarily for you. But if you know what you're doing, it's a whole lot easier to get yourself out of it once you realize what you're doing to yourself. Okay, guys, so I'm going to go back to dealing with my own perfection paralysis, which I think I've mainly worked through until the next project comes along, of course. But if you've ever had perfection paralysis, or think you may have, make sure you're leaving it in the comments below, and we'll be able to tell everybody out there that they're not alone. If you are working on one of your first projects, you've never queried before, anything like that, I'm here to tell you that you can definitely do it. Just make sure that you don't completely spin your wheels and end up psyching yourself out trying to make it absolutely perfect. It may not be perfect, but it's probably wonderful, and the world needs to see your writing and they want to share these stories with you. So make sure that you aren't keeping them to yourself because they aren't exactly 100% perfect. Thank you for watching this video, and if you are a subscriber, thank you so much for coming back. If you would like to subscribe, make sure you're hitting that red subscription bar and the notification bell to let you know when I have more videos like this or other videos on publishing or writing. Definitely check out my channel if you've never been here before. I have lots of different things on various different topics, and I will see you all next week.